actually thought, has anybody really investigated Kamala Harris's genealogy? Like, we just keep being told she's Black suddenly, and the media keeps overreacting when people say she's not Black. And I can't find any evidence that Kamala Harris is Black. So I said, I'm going to pause everything and do a deep dive on Kamala Harris's genealogy. And what I discovered is so shocking, okay? So first, let's start with just Kamala Harris's birth certificate. This is it. This is an authentic copy of it. It's already been discussed. You can see in the corner there that we have highlighted on her mother's name is an Indian name, Shailamala Gopalan, and under color or race of mother, her mother has put Caucasian, extremely controversial, but we don't need to focus on the mother, because the mother, everyone accepts the mother is not Black at all, right? So if she's some part Caucasian, majority Indian, everyone accepts that the mother is not the claim to her Black heritage, it is the father. So in the bottom there, you can see that it says that her father's name is Donald Jasper Harris, and that the color or the race of the father is listed as Jamaican, okay? So you can be Jamaican, you can grow up in Jamaica and not be Black, obviously. It's like Elon Musk, like he was born and raised in Africa. It would be absurd for Elon Musk to say that he was Black, because he is not Black. He is a white African. So I wanted to go further into Donald Jasper Harris, allegedly born in Jamaica in 1938. He has indicated that someone in his family is Black. So who are his parents? Okay. So this is Kamala's dad, Donald Harris. We're looking now into Kamala's grandparents. The grandparents' names are Beryl Christie Finnegan Harris and Oscar Joseph Brown Harris. So let's start with Beryl. Let's start with her grandmother. This is an alleged photo of Beryl Christie Harris, okay? It is the only one that exists in the public domain, and I want you guys to know that it was presented by Kamala herself. I looked at it and I was like, oh, okay, like where did this photo come from? Actually, Kamala is the one that entered this into the public domain in her book, which is entitled The Truths We Hold, which was published in 2019. So looking at this woman, she looks Black, and she wrote, visiting my paternal grandmother, Beryl, in Jamaica, okay? Now, when I saw this, I assumed it was a fake photo, and I assumed that somebody had put it up other than Kamala, because just doing a very brief search, and then I quadruple checked this across multiple websites, genealogy websites and genealogists, that can't be Kamala's grandmother. Let's pull up a picture of her again. That can't be Kamala's grandmother, because at least according to my research, Grandma Beryl died before Kamala was born. And now I want the internet to fact check this with me. This is wild, okay? Beryl was born in 1921 and she died in 1960, okay? I've checked grave sites everywhere. This is it's not exactly a very common name and not an exactly very common place, specifically where she was born, St. Anne's Parish in Jamaica. That would mean that Beryl had Kamala's father when she was just 17 years old in 1938, and she died when she was just 39 years old. The Black woman in that photo is not 39 years old. So this is a major discrepancy, okay? And this is just a tiny bit of digging. I went, wait a second. Has anybody realized that Beryl allegedly died when she was 39 years old in 1960? That means that Kamala would have been born 4 years after her grandmother died in 1964. 1964 is when Kamala was born. Her grandmother died in 1960. So who is that woman that is in the photo with Kamala, okay? Beryl Finnegan, now looking more into her grandmother, was definitively not Black. Now, how do we know this? Because Beryl, that woman that you just saw, her father was Patrick Alhanasus Finnegan, who was an Irish slaver, okay? So that woman that you just saw, at a bare minimum, has to be half white. An Irish slaver is who her father was. Doesn't look like that. Maybe that Irish slaver married a super duper Black woman. I don't know, but I know that that is not a picture of Beryl, and I know that Beryl is at a minimum half white, okay? Because the father was an Irish slaver. Now, what about Kamala's grandfather? The other side of this, Oscar Joseph Brown Harris is his name. That's allegedly who Beryl married, right? Okay. What I've learned about him, this is the photo that they have produced of him. That's supposed to be her grandfather. Where I've learned about Oscar was that he was born in 1914. Brown was his mother's maiden name. His mother was a woman named Christiana Brown, who was known as Miss Chrissy. Christiana Brown's father was also a white Irish slave trader named Colonel Hamilton Brown. That is the white Irish slave trader named Colonel Brown. He married an indentured servant, an Irish woman named Kate Williams, presumably Catherine Williams. And let me tell you how wealthy her family was. Colonel Hamilton established the town that they lived in. It was called Hamilton Town. It's now called Browntown. And he owned, at a minimum, 1,120 slaves, according to records, okay? So they were a family of wealthy Irish slave traders. But now let's go back to that photo again. Who is this with Kamala Harris that is wrongly assumed to be her grandmother? Again, you guys can fact check me. I was going, this is just weird. How did nobody notice this? Well, that woman looks an awful lot like a slightly younger version of somebody that we are told is Kamala's great-grandmother, okay? A woman named Ora Iris Finnegan Allen. See that face? Looks just like the woman that we just saw, but slightly older. Now let's go back again to that photo of the Beryl, who's definitely not Beryl, okay? And let's go forward here so you guys can get this in your head. That looks like the same woman to me, okay? But this woman is allegedly her great-grandmother, who is known as Miss Iris, okay? So pull up Miss Iris again, the great-grandmother who Kamala is allegedly on her lap. We can all agree that that woman looks to be at least some percentage Black, and it's about to get weird, okay? So first, just so we are clear, even if this woman was 100% Black, that would make Kamala majority Irish white. She would be majority white. So it's completely crazy that she would suddenly claw out and pretend that she's Black, okay? If she was 100% that woman, great-grandmother, if she was 100% Black, that would make Kamala 12% Black under a best case scenario. But I thought, okay, that's Miss Iris. She's saying that's her great-grandmother. Let me verify that Miss Iris was fully Black. And a way to do that would be to take a look at Miss Iris's children, you know? Now, to be clear, she allegedly had 4 children. So we have Kamala's missing grandmother, Beryl, who allegedly died at the age of 39, as well as some of Kamala's great uncles and great aunts. And their names were Abraham Judah Finnegan, Noel Finnegan, and Bernard Finnegan, okay? So Beryl, the missing grandma, has 3 siblings: Abraham, Judah Finnegan, Noel Finnegan, and Bernard Finnegan. All of these people have apparently evaporated into thin air. Literally cannot find a single trace of these people who definitely do not have Black names, okay? And I'm just going, I just want to see a picture here. So I'm going to put a bounty on it. I would like someone to do a little bit of due diligence here. Find me Beryl Finnegan and Beryl's 3 siblings, okay? A photo, anything, $1,000. You email it to info@CandaceOwens.com because I am telling you something is not right here. How did nobody realize that Beryl died in 1960 and Kamala in her book published a photo of a grandparent who she wasn't alive to meet, okay? Where is the real Beryl? I would like a photo of Beryl, a photo of any of Beryl's siblings, literally disappeared without a trace. This is the only reason, okay, that people are convinced that Kamala must have some Black in her family is because of these alleged relatives. And it's just ironic because her family is extraordinarily Irish white, extraordinarily wealthy slave-owning descendants. And the only reason we have this image in our head, just like Trump said, suddenly she was Black, is because Kamala's father in 2020, just after Kamala published that photo in her book, Kamala's father in 2020 similarly decided to publish an essay entitled Reflections of a Jamaican Father, where he only included in all of his white Irish slave-owning family, he only decided to include a photo of Miss Iris and Miss Chrissy, who look like the same person to me. Why would he do that? We've got a big old family, got a ton of wealth. Everyone's got a slave. Why did you decide in 2020 to publish a photo of these 2 women, just like Kamala did in her book? I've got question marks. I don't know how it's possible that every time we are electing someone to office, they have a very shady family background, and hers is extremely shady. By the way, Finnegan, there are tons of Finnegans, okay? So I'm not putting 2 and 2 together here, but that also is Joe Biden's family name, like Finnegans for Joe Biden's family, Finnegan's and her family. I wonder if there's a little bit of cross-contamination. Could be, could not be. Like I said, it's a popular last name, but there's something weird here, okay? Beryl and siblings, huge question mark. I don't know. Abraham Judah does not sound to me like the blackest person in the world. And I'm going to need you guys to get on it, internet. $1,000 bounty. Email it to info@candaceowens.com, especially if you're in Jamaica. Like, we got to be able to find something here. Like, if these siblings just disappeared into thin air. Where's great aunt and great uncle? Where's your great unc? All right, guys, I'm going to pause there. Decided to simply look into her genealogy because why on earth is the world trying to convince me that this woman is suddenly black? Like they just decided she was black because she's running and because there is evidence, it is true, that her father grew up in Jamaica. Your race does not magically change because of where you grow up, okay? If I grow up in Sweden, I don't get to suddenly say I'm white, okay? And what I discovered was quite startling. Now, I'll ask you, when did you first get the idea that Kamala was black? Well, you'll say, yeah, when she kind of started running with Joe Biden. And that claim really came from Kamala herself. When they say a picture is worth 1,000 words, they understood that Kamala Harris published a book in 2019 called The Truth That We Hold. And presumably the book was filled with truth that she was holding. I had to look through it. And I saw this picture of her and her grandmother, clearly a black-looking grandmother on page 282 in the photograph section. It reads, as you can see, visiting my paternal grandmother, Beryl, in Jamaica. Also on that same page, there's another photo of her. Again, you can see it's black and white. I'm not quite sure why it is black and white, but it says, when I was 10 months old, I visited Spanish Town, Jamaica. This is me with my mother and my paternal grandfather, Oscar Joseph. And now this guy looks mixed. He looks Asian of some description, but you can see the idea here is that she's definitely trying to introduce, in a manner of photos, things that make her race look more complicated. So I just decided to investigate that, and immediately things got weird, very weird. First and foremost, because it was very easy for me to determine via just a light search online that Beryl, her alleged paternal grandmother that you just saw, died 4 years before Kamala was born in 1960. So last night we decided to continue our research to see if we could find birth certificates and marriage certificates and death certificates, which could further signify those points. And indeed it did. And it also raised even more questions about her genealogy. So let's go through those. Here is the birth certificate for her paternal grandmother. This is Kamala's paternal grandmother, Beryl. Okay, now you can see on this birth certificate that Beryl is spelled with an I. It's Beryl Magdalene. And you can see the reason why we know this is the correct Beryl is because the mother is listed as Iris Finnegan. Later on, we're going to show you in the book, she names Iris Finnegan as her great grandmother. So that would be Beryl's mother. So we have the right woman. Also, formerly, her maiden name is Allen. That is true. It also says here that she's born in October of 1917 in St. Anne. That's the St. Anne Parish of Jamaica. And again, you can see it says that it is signed by Iris Finnegan. Very clearly, this is the woman that we are looking for. This is Kamala's grandmother, alleged grandmother, Beryl. It's also interesting, by the way, that it lists her great-grandmother as a seamstress because Donald Harris, Kamala's father, wrote in a 2020 piece called Reflections of a Jamaican Father, quote, Miss Iris, that again would be his grandmother, was the mother of 8 children, too, was the sweetest and gentlest person one could meet, but underneath it was a tough farming woman who ran the cane farm at Thatch Walk near Annan Town, jointly owned with her husband, Mr. Christie. Okay, that's weird. So you're telling me that she ran a farm because on that birth certificate, it says that actually Iris was a seamstress, but whatever. Let's just park that aside for a second and stick with Beryl, this woman who died before Kamala was born, okay? Because I was feeling pretty certain that not too many people were going to be named Beryl and be born in the St. Anne Parish of Jamaica in 1917 to a mother named Iris Finnegan. I felt confident that we could find a little bit more data, and in fact, we did, okay? First, we stumbled across Beryl's marriage certificate, Okay, so you can see that right here. And now the name spelling has changed. You have Beryl Finnegan spelled with a Y in the same way that Kamala spells it. And it lists their married date as 1944. Again, you can see the parish that is listed is St. Anne Parish. This is where every piece of Beryl's life seems to take place. It reads here that her calling is a barmaid. And something that jumped out at me was the fact that she's married to someone, as you can see, named Lawford Newland. Okay, so Beryl apparently was married more than once because Lawford Newland is not Donald Harris's father, but Beryl is his mother. So just to be clear, again, it says that she married a guy named Lawford Newland in 1944. When she was 25 years old, okay? It's important to note that that would have been 4 years after she gave birth to Donald Harris, Kamala's father. I find that to be very strange. Also, regarding Kamala's father, we cannot seem to locate, regarding Lawford Newland, the person that she married, we can't find him. Can't find him anywhere. We cannot find a birth certificate. We cannot find a death certificate. We can't find a news item or otherwise. I cannot find this alleged Lawford Newland that apparently her grandma got married to. We also can't find a wedding certificate for Beryl and Oscar Wilde Joseph Brown Harris. That is allegedly supposed to be Donald Harris's father. Okay, so Kamala's grandfather is Oscar Wilde Joseph Brown Harris, and we can't find a marriage certificate between the two of them. That's very strange. As speculated, we were able to confirm that Kamala's Black grandmother that she showed us in that picture died in 1960, before Kamala was born. I can show you right now her death certificate. Let's take a look at Beryl's death certificate, which confirms. As you can see there, it says that she died in July of 1960. It also tells us on the right-hand side, you guys will probably have to zoom in on this, but she died of a uterine infection, uterine fibroids due to a hysterectomy. It has her listed as 39 years. That's actually a couple of years off from 1917, so somebody may have gotten their math wrong here. But you once again see that it lists her birthplace as St. Anne. And so this is a huge scandal. Just an absolutely huge scandal. Kamala Harris published in her book that she was standing next to her Grandma Beryl. But Grandma Beryl died in 1960, 4 years before Kamala Harris was born. So who the hell is the real Beryl? Who is that woman standing next to Kamala Harris? And do you know what I noticed about that woman standing next to her? She looks a lot like the woman that Kamala claims in her book is her great-grandmother, Iris. Now, that's Iris Finnegan. Here's the book with my great-grandmother, Iris Finnegan in Jamaica. Now, I'm going to give you the side-by-side of Iris and her alleged daughter, Beryl, who died at 39. Now, that woman on the right is not 39 years old. She's clearly much more advanced in her age. I mean, we know black don't crack. I mean, that's just a scientific fact. So I would put that woman on the right-hand side, who she tried to pass off as Beryl, and I think is the exact same person. I would say that that woman looks to be about 65. And then it looks like she's more advanced on the left-hand side. The great-grandmother, that's the same person. When I just believe my own eyes, we're looking at the same person. What do you guys think when you look at those photos? How the hell does a person who is the vice president of the United States pass off a book, claim that these people that are in her book are her black relatives, and nobody bats an eyelash or does even a peripheral search to recognize that the woman that she put forth is implausibly her grandmother? And by the way, I'm going to say this and people can be offended, but the first thing that I thought when I saw the photo of her sitting on her great-grandmother's lap was that this doesn't look like a grandparent affection going on here. Like, this woman looks like she could be working for the family. Quite literally, I thought to myself, this woman looks like she could be the help. And I thought that because there's a lack of affection there. Do you know what I mean? But there's no, like, in both of the photos, there's a lack of affection. It's just like a woman standing next to her. And I obviously know that that was a circumstance. When you're talking about a family that had a ton of plantations, which is the reality. She descends from Irish slavers. That is a fact that Kamala Harris cannot deny. She descends from wealthy Irish slavers who they did own the town. They named the town. It was Hamilton Town, then it was Brownstown in Jamaica. He had over 1,000 slaves, okay? It would follow that there would be help around the house. And I'm just going to put here as a question mark, not as a fact. If they're looking at some of these photos of people who became like family and they're trying to pass them off like relatives, again, not a fact, a huge question mark, but my instinct tells me that that person is actually not her family member. And if it is, well, Kamala's got some explaining to do. How did she meet Grandma Beryl almost 20 years after Grandma Beryl died? Because Kamala Harris looks to be about 20 in that photo that she presented. Then there's another bit of a mystery, as I said. If Beryl married after her or before her wedding when she was 25 years old to the missing Newland, if anybody can find Newland, please let me know. But if Beryl married at some point Oscar Wilde Joseph Brown, where is their marriage certificate? And where is their divorce certificate? Again, I'm only prodding the narrative here because I'm going to need proof that she's Black. The media has now made this a thing, and now you made it so much of a thing that you're attacking people like Janet Jackson when she asks a very reasonable question that you should be able to respond to. And now we have a verifiable lie that Kamala Harris told in her book, or a big uh-oh, because, you know, if I'm being nice, I guess sometimes you think when you're publishing a book that it's a photo of you and your grandmother that you never met or never could have met. Maybe Kamala was just confused and thought it was her grandma, but it was a grandmother that she had, again, never met. Media should be on this, and they should be asking her this question. How did you make this significant of a blunder in your book? And isn't it quite ironic that every photo that you have presented, two of which look like they're the exact same person, one aged on, which begs the question, is that even Kamala Harris in her lap? I don't know. Again, we're at the beginning of this investigation. But it's interesting that amongst all of the relatives, so many Irish white slavers, the only photos that she chose to put in this book are the ones that make it look as though she might be Black. And we have just significantly and without question debunked one of those photos. Also, there's something else that I notice about Beryl and Oscar, this alleged married couple, right? Our alleged husband and wife. Each of them are listed as having a lot of siblings. Oscar's siblings are named Hildred May Harris, Newton Alexander Harris, and Ina Doreen Harris. I cannot find a single photo of these siblings. Now, why am I looking for it? Well, because people take family photos all the time. Tons of the stuff is on the internet. I mean, one of those people lived until 2005. Ina Doreen Harris allegedly lived until 2005. I would just like to see a photo to confirm that these are Black relatives. I just want to confirm their race. Can't find a trace. Similarly for Beryl Finnegan has siblings too. Their names are Abraham Judah Finnegan, Noah Pendergast Finnegan, Bernard Washington Finnegan, and Gloria Eugenie Hill. Where are they? Or where are any photos of them, presuming that they've passed? Where are the photos of them? They've got to be somewhere, right? Something very suspicious is going on. I don't know how it is plausible, guys. Do not allow the media to gaslight us. It is not difficult, okay, for a person that is running for president of the United States to have a tidy background. This is my mom. This is my dad. This is my grandma. That it always seems to be the case that right before they run, they introduce like one or two photos that they allege are from their childhood. This is my grandma. This is my mom. And if you ask any more questions, I'm going to scream at you and call you a racist, is completely ridiculous. We now have a scandal on our hands, okay? And again, this is the tip of the iceberg. I'm going to keep going. I'm going to keep looking for these relatives. I'm going to confirm that all of these people are in fact Black. I find it strange, just as a little tidbit, that when you go on these genealogy websites, you can see that there's somebody managing the profile. All of the people that are managing the profile for Kamala's relatives are white. What interest would white people around the United States have in managing the profile for this Jamaica family? Unless Well, unless what Janet Jackson said was true, and that these are her white Irish relatives, and she's been hiding that fact by trying to introduce some random photos of a woman and purporting that that woman is her grandmother. Again, if she's been with you throughout your entire life, Kamala, you could drop some more photos, but no matter what, you lied in your book, okay? You lied in your book. That woman died in 1960, and you were born in 1964, and I find that to be extremely problematic. Like I said, I'm in these streets, just like you, Kamala. So if you want to come out and tell the truth, I'm going to be on this. Otherwise, you might as well come up with your storyline, because I don't tend to let go when I have the scent of somebody who's telling a lie. All right, guys, I don't even know where we begin here. I mean, I'm just shaken. So look, if you're just jumping into this, you got to stop and you got to go back 2 episodes and play catch up, episode 70 and episode 71, because we're not going to do too much recapping here because I want to jump right into this. Basically, someone came for Janet Jackson and I answered the door. It was a discrepancy that was in Kamala's book, a woman that she said was her grandmother named Beryl, a picture of her and her grandmother Beryl. Here it is, visiting my paternal grandmother Beryl in Jamaica. And then I did just a brief search online and found out that Beryl allegedly died 4 years before Kamala was born. So that's a major red flag. Then I had a little bit of a gut instinct. The photos that were being presented of Kamala and her grandparents, great-grandmother and Beryl, I just felt that the women, or the woman, because I think they look remarkably alike, I just feel that maybe this woman was the help. And I'm not saying that because she's Black. I'm not racist against Black people. I am Black. I'm saying this because there's just a lack of emotion there. Like, I don't know if it's just my grandparents, but when they're with you, they're like super cuddly and cute. And this woman's just kind of very serious each time that she's being featured here. So anyways, what happened was we sourced Beryl's birth certificate. And then my instinct got a little bit stronger because her name was spelled differently in the birth certificate, right? So you see that it says Beryl spelled B-E-R-I-L, Magdalene. And we know for a fact, by the way, so people that are submitting other birth certificates, this is definitively the correct birth certificate because it says Iris Finnegan. And we know based on Kamala and Kamala's father, Donald J. Harris, that Iris Finnegan is the mother of Beryl. And then we see that her name changes, the spelling of her name changes, rather, by the time that we looked at her marriage certificate. Suddenly you can see that the marriage certificate has her name being spelled with a Y. Now that to me signaled that maybe she definitely is the help, and I'll tell you why. So my grandfather, before he passed away, maybe like 10 years before he passed away, I got kind of obsessed with trying to find all of these documents pertaining to his life, because I realized like that's my ancestry. And I was having a ton of trouble mining his grandmother's information because on each document, her name was spelled differently, as well as other people in the family. And I was like, Granddad, why is everyone's name spelled differently depending on the document? Like, this is very confusing. Why is it sometimes spelled Liza versus Eliza versus like Lizbeth? That was his grandmother's name. And he explained to me that they didn't know how to read and write. So you forget this. You forget that you had a world the majority of people couldn't read and write, especially if you were not considered like a high-class person. My grandfather grew up on a sharecropping farm. And so what that meant was even if you had a name, if you couldn't read and write, you were going up to the register, whether it was for birth, whatever it was, and you were just telling somebody the name. You weren't saying like, hi, it's Candace, C-A-N-D-A-C-E. You're just saying Candace, and one person might spell it C-A-N-D-I-S. Somebody might spell it C-A-N-D-I-C-E. If you do not know how to read and write, you don't recognize these discrepancies. So that actually, I thought, was a good thing in terms of like my idea that this woman could have potentially just been the help, maybe like on my scent. But I didn't want to be too convinced. Obviously, you know, I lean into the conspiracy mindset because we've been lied to so many times. But like I said, we did find that marriage certificate between Beryl and Lawford Newland, which was in July of 1944. And I want to be clear, guys, we know for a fact this is the correct Beryl. So we're not confused here and looking for more documentation when it comes to the birth or the marriage, because the correct parents are listed. You can see Patrick Finnegan is listed. And so we know that Beryl's parents are Iris Finnegan and Patrick Finnegan. So that is the correct parent, the correct marriage certificate. But we had no idea who Lawford Newland was. We had no idea that Beryl had allegedly been married after she birthed Donald Harris. That would be Kamala Harris's father. Thought that was like quite strange. She would have been 6 years old in 1944. Donald Harris was born in 1938. So this means that she got married to this guy, Lawford Newland, and she had a 6-year-old. So I thought that was quite strange. I couldn't find anything on Lawford Newland, but somebody on the team was able to determine that he arrived on a ship to New Orleans. He arrived in New Orleans, from Jamaica in May of 1943. So we're showing you here the ship manifest, and Lawford Newland is on the ship, and he is listed as, he's listed as a Negro. He's Black. It says his marital status is single. That would be correct because this would have been a trip the year before he got married to Beryl. So quite strangely, he went to New Orleans, and then I guess he at some point had to have gone back just a year later to get married. We still have not been able to locate the relevant marriage certificate between Oscar Harris. Now that's, again, Kamala's dad. His father is Oscar Harris. We cannot find that marriage between Kamala's grandfather and Beryl. So that's like a huge question mark there, right? Like, where is that marriage certificate? If you guys find it, we're checking our emails, and we're obviously aware that there are a lot of different Beryls that are being born in Jamaica at different times. Some people are like, this could be the case of 2 Beryls, and they're sending us different birth certificates. Like I said, we know we have the correct birth certificate. We know we have the correct marriage certificate. We know for a fact that this Beryl did get married, and that Donald should have been 6 years old when she got married. So it begs the question, was this her second marriage? Did she have a child out of wedlock with Oscar Harris? Did she have Donald? And then did she get married? Because it lists her on her marriage certificate as a spinster, which means that she's not married, obviously. And then she gets married to Lawford Newland. And then at some point they would have had to divorce if she remarried and got married to Oscar. So she would have had to have gotten with him, had a child with him, married somebody else, divorced that somebody else, and then gotten back together with Oscar and gotten married. That's like a lot of movement. Again, we don't have any documentation, so we're not going to speculate. But Beryl in general, I'm not describing her as the dog that's not barking, okay? So some people were saying, well, I've seen on different websites that there was also a Beryl Harris that died in 1995, and maybe this could potentially be her. We've done the math on that. No, that woman would have been born in 1914. Like I said, we know for a fact Beryl was born. The birth certificates are probably the most relevant source because you obviously wouldn't have a birth certificate written years later after the fact that your child was born. It says that Beryl was born in 1917. But I started going back to that piece that Donald Harris wrote. Remember, the first time that we were kind of introduced to the fact that Kamala Harris was Black, it was because Donald Harris wrote this piece, which came right behind Kamala Harris's book, Reflections of a Jamaican Father. And I just would like to, by the way, really stress to you how Black he was trying to suddenly make them. Like, I'm just going to read you the first sentence of this by Donald J. Harris, Kamala's father. As a child growing up in Jamaica, I often heard it said by my parents and family friends, "'Member where you come from." And then he goes on and he writes, my one big regret is that Kamala and her sister did not come to know very well the 2 most influential women in my life, Miss Chrissy and Miss Iris. Okay, so those are his grandparents, according to him. Those are both of his grandmothers, maternal and paternal. And then the whole piece is about his grandmother, his two grandmothers. And he wrote, both of my grandmothers had the strongest influence on my early upbringing. And then in parentheses, he writes, not to exclude, of course, the influence of my dear mother, Miss Beryl, and loving father, Mass Oscar. Like, I think it's supposed to be like Massa, like Mass Oscar. Very strange. Again, nobody that I know calls their mom Miss Beryl, calls their grandmother Miss Iris, and calls their other grandmother Miss Iris. There's something about that that doesn't strike me as familial. But again, that's speculation. Doesn't matter. Maybe there is this strange family where everyone, like, they address their mom as Miss, and they address their grandmother as Miss, and they address their other grandmother as Miss, like that. It really isn't up to us to make any conclusions. But that's the first and last time that he mentions his mother, Miss Beryl, okay? Which signals to me that my theory about her having died young, you're saying you're raised by your grandparents, but your mother is around, but you don't talk about your mother or speak about your mother at all in this entire piece, signals to me that this is correct and your mother died early, okay? You're not mentioning her for a reason. So then this gets crazy. I get an email. Actually, I got 2 emails, but this one in particular made me sit up straight in bed. Like, I'm not kidding. I was like about to fall asleep and I just decided to check the email box and I sat up. I sat up just like this and started texting everyone. And I woke my husband up. I was like, you have to read this email. This is completely crazy. It came all the way from New Zealand. Shout out to New Zealand. I'll be on tour there soon, you guys. Get out there, buy some tickets, because we're going to talk about this now. That's the only thing I'm going to speak about in New Zealand. But I'm going to just read this email to you because it's just incredible. Kia ora from New Zealand, Candace. My name is blank. And after your first podcast about the family of Kamala Harris yesterday, I went down the rabbit hole all day looking for photos of Beryl Finnegan Harris's brothers and sisters, as you asked. I was so intrigued and I wanted to take up your challenge. I could not find those photos, but I did come across a record that you might be interested in. I noticed on Kamala's birth certificate, you showed that her father, Donald Harris, was 26 at her birth in 1964, giving him a presumable birth year of 1938. That is correct. He was born in 1938. I'm just saying that as an aside. I came across the attached record of a 1-year-old child who died in 1940 in St. Anne's Parish. This infant's name was Donald Harris. You will notice the baby's father's name that is given was Albert Harris, and there's no mother mentioned. However, you will be interested to notice that a person listed as present at the death of the child was none other than Beryl Harris. She has also signed the death record. What are the chances that Beryl had her own baby named Donald in 1938 and then was also in attendance of the passing of a baby named Donald Harris in 1940? Weird, right? And just to be clear, that we're going to show you that certificate because it would mean that there were 2 Donald Harris babies born that Beryl was around. One was hers and one, I don't know, guys. It's getting weird. I'm going to finish this email, then we're going to talk about it. I have looked for the infant's father, Albert Harris, and cannot find a lot about him. Albert's father name was Abraham Harris. I believe it is possible he was married to a Violet Fearon on the 6th of March, 1935. No record of her passing, so why was she not at her child's death, but Beryl Harris was? Was this baby Beryl's or Violet's? If Donald Harris passed 1 year old, who is the man claiming to be Kamala's father? Oh my gosh, chill. She wrote, make it make sense. I'll keep digging. Chills. I was like, what are you talking about? I've opened this email so fast. It was crazy. And let me just show you the attachment. Chills. I'm freaking out. I'm freaking out all over again. It's hitting me. It's a second wave here of what? So yes, you will see that listed here. This is a death certificate that is on the 29th of November, 1940, okay, in St. Anne Parish. That obviously is where her family is from. And yes, the child's name was Donald Harris. The child died before the child turned 2. So this would mean that it is plausible that this child was born in 1938, the exact same year that Donald J. Harris, Kamala's father, was born. Okay. Can you pull it back up? I'm not done reading through this. Okay. So you have also, it says the certified cause of death is fever and a cold. And it's letting you know, it says the duration of the illness, so that this baby was sick for 1 month, rest in peace. And it does mention that that baby is the son of Albert Harris. And just as this person speculates, it is signed by Beryl Harris. And it tells you, because you're supposed to include this, the signature of the person who was present at the death. And it says Beryl Harris, present at the death. And that is at Mount Moriah in St. Anne. Now, I want to be clear, there is no place to put the mother's name. So it's not like there's anything like strange here. I just think that if this is this Beryl's child and this Beryl Harris was married to this Albert Harris or together with this Albert Harris at some time, like that is the reason why it just says that present for the death. Like literally, who else would be present? If your child is dying less than 2 years old, okay, barely 2 years old, who would you allow to be there in your place? There's no mother on earth that wouldn't be next to their child. So it is very heavily suggested that Beryl Harris was there for the presence of her son, Donald Harris, dying. And that would put that approximate birth of that baby at 1938. Stop the press. Stop the press, okay? So you can imagine me, now you're me sitting up straight, like, what is going on here? Like, actually, what do I know about Kamala's father? Like, this could be a coincidence, I'm sure. Yeah, I guess you could have like a lot of barrels that are giving birth to Donalds in the year 1938 in St. Anne Parish. Of course, like you have to consider every possibility here, but also consider that this is crazy. This is absolutely crazy. Okay, so then I received a second email, okay? Very interesting here. Very interesting here. And I'm just going to read the email. I'm just going to read the email and take you through this. What happens when I go through my info box that I tell you guys to message with deets. This email says, "Hi, Candace. See the death certificate below indicating that Beryl Christie was a domestic servant in 1936 when her infant daughter died." So there's another, and this person has written Beryl Christie and lost her daughter, and I'm going to pull it up here at the bottom of this email. She talks about like the birth dates. I'll get to that later. Do you guys have a close-up of this? Yeah. Okay. So you can see here, it is Beryl Christie, and this would mean not only did Beryl Christie lose a child in 1940, but prior to that, Beryl Christie lost a daughter in 1936. Okay. Again, all we have here is Beryl Christie. We know that this is potentially the right Beryl. Again, there could be another Beryl Christie going around. I don't want to completely close the door on that, but it is interesting. And I'll tell you why this struck me as incredibly interesting, because when we spoke about the death certificate yesterday, right, and we spoke about this young death of a woman, she's particularly died, Beryl Christie, of fibroids related to a hysterectomy. So if there is a Beryl Christie that had back-to-back, had lost children in some regard, you could imagine that she might have been injured internally. This is a long time ago. You would imagine that the procedures, obviously, are not what they are today. And it is plausible that that woman died young of fibroids from a hysterectomy related to the fact that she had two troubling births, whatever it is, carrying children didn't work out for her. I just thought, like, okay, but the big part about that second one is that we now know for a fact that there was a Beryl Christie that was, in fact, a domestic servant. Can you pull that back up again? Because I want to point that out so people can see this. The last one, the close-up of it, if we can. You can see that she is listed as a domestic servant. That girl is listed as the daughter of Beryl Christie. You can see that in that where it says rank, profession, or occupation, daughter of Beryl Christie, domestic servant. I don't know, guys. Like I said, I'm trying to now, I'm putting in columns to sort through the various Beryl Christies that were born around this time. Like I said, you guys keep sending me stuff, but just to make sure you're filtering yourself, we know for a fact that Beryl Christie was born in 1917. We know for a fact that Beryl Christie got married in 1944. To Lawland Newford, or whatever his name is, Lawford Newland, pardon. And so we don't need a bunch of documents speculating that it could be a different birth, because her parents are listed, and Kamala and her father have confirmed that her parents are Iris and Patrick Finnegan, okay? So we know those are the people that we are looking for. Oddly enough, though, because a lot of people have been pointing out the fact that in her birth certificate, even though we know that that's her mom, Iris, that's the mom's name, Iris Finnegan, it says Magdalene, and then suddenly it converts to Christie. Well, I just wanted to point out to you, because that was a question we were getting a lot, is why would she take on Christie? In Donald Harris's piece, he writes explicitly that Miss Iris, so that's Kamala's great-grandmother, that her husband was known as Mr. Christie. So I'll read you that paragraph. It says, Miss Iris, mother of 8 children, I can't find 8 children, by the way, was the sweetest and gentlest person one could meet, but underneath it was a tough farming woman who ran the cane farm at Thatch Walk, jointly owned with her husband, Mr. Christie. So the reason she may have put Christie, or started using Christie as a middle name, is because that would mean that her father was being called Mr. Christie. Again, we are getting that directly from Donald J. Harris, who I'm now very interested in. I'm now very interested in this particular Donald J. Harris. Obviously, very easy way to debunk this. And maybe there really was just another Beryl Christie that happened to have a child named Donald in the same year from the same parish, would be to just take a look at Kamala's father's birth certificate. And we can't find that. We quite literally cannot find that. And I find that to be very strange. People were writing to me saying, hey, it looks like this was purposefully removed, that his birth certificate was removed. And I would just like to find it because it would just kind of let me be at ease and know that there's nothing further to look at other than this child, because it's just a very, very strange thing. Okay, I also wanted to just go over everything we do know about Donald J. Harris because I was interested in him suddenly. And the first thing is he, according to him, like Miss Crishy in this piece is his paternal grandmother. He calls her Miss Crishy. He acknowledges that they were descendants of the slave owner Hamilton Brown. And he is the founder of Brownstown. That's another thing that strikes me as very odd, and maybe there's something I'm missing here. But if you were a person that established a town and you had over 1,000 slaves, would you really just openly be married to some of these slaves? Like, is that something that would happen? I know that obviously they would have relations with the slaves, and that's something that is a reality. But in the way that they speak about their family, it's like they were just openly married with slave owners and slavers, which I find to be a little bit strange. As I said, he claims that Miss Crishy owned and operated a dry goods store, and that she died in 1951 at the age of 70. Then we have Miss Iris, who he mentions. That's the maternal grandmother. We can actually get up this. We can get up the family tree so people can see this. He mentions Miss Iris, and that is the person that he completely fawns over. That's his maternal grandmother, Miss Iris. She was a farmer, an educator, he claims. And he also says, which I find to be quite strange, remember, he says he has the strongest relationship with Miss Iris, doesn't even mention his mother, Beryl. By the way, these photos are the ones that have been provided by Kamala herself and her father. I cannot verify that these are accurate photos, but we're just going to use the ones that they're given. But what's quite strange is he says that Miss Iris's ancestry is unknown to him. So I guess they never had that conversation despite how close they are. Again, she jointly owned the farm with her husband, Mr. Christie, and he died in 1981 at the age of 93. He says that she died at the age of 93 at the age of 1981. That's Miss Iris. Then you have Joseph Alexander Harris. Now that is the person who we are to understand that she was married to. The Harris name comes from his paternal grandfather, Joseph Alexander Harris. He was the landowner and the agricultural produce export, and he refers to the family property as Orange Hill. I think we need some Jamaicans to go out here and just start verifying stuff for me. And that Uncle Newton took over Orange Hill and started a limestone mining and brick producing operation in addition to cattle, grass, fruit, pimiento farming of earlier times. Now, again, I am just trying to understand how she came from a middle-class background. I mean, people that had slaves were super wealthy. It sounds like they always owned land, that they always potentially had servants. So I'm just trying to understand where this middle-class background comes from. My producer put in a note here that people in the live chat are saying that it's a Creole language that's native to Jamaica when he starts speaking in this tongue. Okay, I literally didn't know that. I'm sorry, but I just found that he was writing in this way, which I found to be quite strange. I felt like he was trying to sell to us that they were definitely Jamaican or they were like descended from slaves, and they had slaves. So obviously his family actually had slaves, thousands of slaves there. So I thought that he was trying to lean into the slave language. So I'll correct that if that's actually English Creole. Okay, I'm going to take a break here and just speak about one of the sponsors of the show before I get into some of your comments and we speak more about this. This episode is sponsored by Nimi Skincare. It is my favorite skincare. American cause everything care. I find it very interesting that that's something that he include. No, if he was trying to write English Creole, I actually never knew that that was a language that was native to Jamaica. But I do find it very interesting that that's something that he included all throughout this piece. And I would question some of the spelling of things. Like, is Creole, do you actually spell Y-U for you? Or is he just trying to basically signal to us that this was his family? Anyways, literally did not know that. She learned something new every single day. So I also had a ton of other people that introduced some other things that I was not aware of. And I'm just going to kind of go through other things that people brought up that I found to be very interesting. First and foremost, someone told me to take a look again at Kamala's birth certificate. Chris, I don't know if I told you to pull that, but going to her original birth certificate, yeah. So they said, this person emailed me and they were just like, okay, Candace, it is amended in the middle there. So you see there's a stamp in the middle of her birth certificate that says amended 1 of 2. And this person apparently was born in the exact same place as Kamala at the exact same time. He claims that his birth certificate is a different color. Okay, not a big deal. But he said that there was some change made on this birth certificate because it says amended 1 of 2. And so I looked that up because I was like, oh, I didn't even recognize that. And it turns out that yes, in California and in other states, you can file to have your birth certificate amended if you want to change the name of the father, change the name of the mother, if there was some error, like maybe they spelled Kamala's name wrong and they wanted to change the spelling of her name, or if you just completed your adoption process is another reason in California that you are allowed to change the name or make an amendment, pardon. And so it is interesting that that does say amended 1 of 2. I don't know if this means that she amended it 2 times or what the deal is here, but that is something that is of note. And like I said, I'm trying to read through and sort through all of your emails and to